Hello everybody, thank you very much for joining our Intelligent Filtering webinar. I'm Paul Putton, CEO, and I'm actually joined today by Liz James, who is our Marketing Operations Manager, and Liz will be doing the live demonstration of the services, as frankly she's much better than I am at doing that kind of stuff. However, I'm going to sort of set the scene and talk through a little bit of information about the services and where we see that they drive value and engagement for our customers. Obviously, thank you very much for turning up today, and we are genuinely excited about the opportunity that this creates. And the presentation will last between 20 and 25 minutes. As far as questions go, there's a little box on the side if you want to type questions in at any point, and we will come back to them at the end of the presentation to be able to answer them and answer any ones that happen on the fly at that point. So let's get cracking. It's a sunny day. So the first thing is the services were built to essentially deal with the primary challenge of how to drive an increased amount of value and engagement using messaging as a way to communicate to your customers for either marketing or operational services, communications. The first point that we're really going to focus on is around driving value. In today's mobile market, most organizations, most suppliers or vendors or service providers for messaging charge you for what you send in terms of messages. And the reality is behind that is that 20 to 30% of all messages that are sent out through network operators via applications go to what we would call dead or non-responsive numbers, which essentially means that when you send out your messages, 20 to 30% of your expense and pay and what you drive out commercially is going nowhere. And it became very obvious to us that a great way of immediately showing value to all of our customers was to build out a service that essentially allowed our customers to knock out the risk of sending out messages to numbers that don't exist anymore, and therefore driving the appropriate value or change in costs to be able to receive the benefits of that. It is illogical for any company to pay for something that does not deliver an ROI. However, our market, a lot of organizations actually rely on the fact that you're going to send to stuff that doesn't exist to create margin. So in a little way, we are trying to disrupt the market somewhat in bringing out this technology and ensuring that people get value. So it's a simple message. The first sort of objective of the service is to make sure that you pay or you get for what you're paying for or what you consume from our messaging platform. So that's kind of step one in terms of driving value. Then we take it a little bit step further and we talk about the engagements that we're trying to drive. One of the key things is that everybody knows that messaging is a very intimate kind of communications, and people react differently to receiving those. And the objective of most organizations is to ensure that when they're sending out communications, that they're sending to the people who want to engage in that. So one of our key points about driving engagement is to only send to that audience that has a history or a predictability that they will want to engage in that. For instance, not sending to people that have a very, very high propensity to opt out. Certainly not sending to people who have a very high propensity to respond with an expletive. Because clearly, that has a potential implication for brand damage if that consumer or person that you've sent those messages out to responds very badly. You can then really start using the services to drive even further down by targeting operating systems, by targeting those that are highly responsive. And I'm going to kind of tell you how all of that works as we go through the presentation. But the ultimate goal is to make sure that you're delivering a timely and responsive message. That means that you get the maximum ROI and you really are only sending it to your engaged audience. So, great little slide here with a picture of a brain. We're very proud of this. So this is what we call our intelligent brain, and we've been building it for the last 2 years and collecting data for actually a number of years before that. And what the brain does is it looks at all of the transactions that we process, and around the brain you'll see lots of little words come out. We can see them all now, in terms of whether a phone is dead, what their propensity is to opt out, whether they do or not, which country they're in, when they're traveling, what is their response rate to a message, how often do they click through from a URL that's embedded with the message, and then there's a whole plethora of other ones as well. And the brain is looking at each of those individual transactions, and it's creating transactions. So it's creating an understanding of how, when a number is sent a message, how it responds and whether it's actually received or not. And the brain, as I said, has been building up this information for a number of years, and it's really taken us 2 years to develop the services, because it's what we would call a heuristic-based artificial intelligence that captures and creates a propensity model based around the facts of the transactions. And it's a very, very powerful tool, and it's very exciting. But that's the brain, and we'll talk about the brain as we move forward. Let's talk about how it works now. So filtering is the live application of querying the brain. So if you can imagine, there's a nice easy diagram at the top. You send a message through our platform, whether it be from an application or through an API. It hits the filtering platform. The filtering platform looks at the filters that you've set up, queries the brain to check that number and how it responds based around the filters that you've set, and if it's okay, it passes it through. If it doesn't, it drops the message. It's as simple as that. Now what we've done is we've actually created a set of predefined filters to make things easier. So where we've got the driving value piece, there's a load of preset filters that allow you to switch on that value component straight away. And then there's additional predefined filters that allow you to start looking at engagement. And clearly when Liz walks you through this later on in the presentation, it will become a lot more evident. You activate it and you change all your settings within the Cloud Portal, and you can apply those filter sets to all your outbound message, or specific to a campaign or specific to a particular account. So it really gives you the flexibility to use the filtering based around what you're trying to send out rather than just everything. One of the key things is that you'll notice in the demonstrator that we simulate the filters before we activate them. We've actually made this a part of the process, and it's to ensure that when you look at your data and you upload the data of your numbers, or a subset of the data of your numbers, when you run the simulation you can see the implications of that. Then you can tweak those simulations if you want, or those filters, until it starts giving you the desired results in terms of value and engagement. Reporting is obviously always available, and it's downloadable through a selection of options. And once it's filtered out, you have the ability to use our intelligent query, which we did the webinars last week on, to be able to download the specific information of why the filter has actually dropped a message or not. So, we give you complete visibility of the brain's information that is driving the filters and how they operate. So it's taking a lot of information and making it very simple for you to use. Little point on the filters. Filters are set by behaviors, device, and live. I'm not going to go through each filter individually. You can all kind of read what's on there. But you have things like people's propensity to opt out. Whether they've replied to a short code or not before in the past. For instance, that may demonstrate that they've got a propensity to respond to mobile-based marketing. How quickly or average time to respond? Do they have a positive response rate? And things like average time to click through. So it gives you a behavioral prediction on how they're going to respond, so that if you really need to, you can really be very specific and only target highly responsive numbers. Device is more factual based, and has roamed is maybe not as important as the next two, which is last known active and is live, and they form the backbone to the value-based filters. Because essentially that's going to stop you sending out messages and paying for messages that are going to dead or not live phones. You've also got a number of other filters, mobile network, if you don't, say for instance, want to send to a particular mobile network. Or, you know, for me the last two are the most logical, is web enabled or an operating system. The example that we're going to actually use to demonstrate the service is going to leverage the operating system component of the filters. But, you know, why send out web content or links to web content within a message to phones that are not web enabled? Illogical, but many people do. The live component of the service is a live ping to the phone. It actually happens when you filter or when you simulate, and also when you have this filter switched on live, and it's pinging the phone literally milliseconds before it's sending the message, and that's to tell predominantly to tell whether that phone is switched on at that particular time or is potentially roaming. And that's an incredibly powerful tool if it is an alert, or if you need to deliver something and that response or that information is only valid for an hour or so. Say for instance in-game betting or things like that, which is where it's used most frequently. So as you can see, the filters give you a range of options to be able to target, but essentially building out a simple set of filters can actually deliver you an incredible amount of value based around what potentially you do today. So at this point I'm going to hand over to Liz, who's now going to do a live demonstration. Liz.
Thanks, Paul. Hi everyone. So I'm just going to run through today how to simulate using intelligent filtering. As Paul explained, in order to activate a new filter set you must simulate first. So we're going to do that today as a test. We're not going to run the live campaign, just simulate a small portion of the numbers. In this instance we're using the example of Company A. So that's one of our customers who sends with us regularly large amounts, but for this purpose we're obviously not giving away any of their details. So they asked us to send a campaign to a total of 600,000 numbers with a standard message length of 160 characters. And the message content there was to drive app downloads for their mobile app on Windows, iOS and Android handsets. And in this instance they're also using intelligent tracking, which will come into play later when Paul talks through the results of the campaign. So I'm just going to come out of the presentation now and go to our portal. Now, for those of you who've used our cloud portal before, you'll know that if you log on, you can access the intelligent cloud services directly from the dashboard or through cloud services and then intelligence. Just to run through our intelligent cloud services briefly, we have three services. You'll probably all know that we launched intelligent tracking in January. Webinars for that are available online if you haven't already seen them. And intelligent query occurred last week, which also the webinars will be available next week along with these filtering ones we're doing at the moment. So I'm just going to run through how to create a new filter set. So there's a list here of predefined filter sets that we have available in this account already, and I'm going to create a new one from scratch for this instance. So I'm just going to call it test for now. So as Paul mentioned earlier, what we're trying to do with filtering is drive value and engagement and enable you to target specific groups of customers. So to start with, I'm going to drive value by removing any numbers that are dead or haven't been recently active on a mobile network. So for that I'm going to use the known live number filter and the last known active within filter. So here I'm just going to set the known live to 12 months. So this is just going to look for numbers that have been active within the last 12 months and known to have been live within that period. And we're also going to set the filter for last known active and leave that at 26 weeks, so that's 6 months. Just to explain that if a number has been active, it means it's been active on a mobile network. So that may be that it's clicked through, it's responded, it's received a message successfully. A number of things are used to denote whether that number is live right now. So I'm going to run my first filter simulation on that data. Apologies, got a silly error. Okay, so when running a simulation, you can use up to 10,000 contacts. So although we're doing a campaign for 600,000 numbers in this instance, we're actually using only 10,000 of them for this simulation. Because as I say, it's only an indicative idea of what your campaign results will be, not the entire thing. So this is the simulation results page. You can see here on the left that we've got our results of our current filter set. So without intelligent filtering, we can see that we would have spent £320 on this campaign, sending 10,000 messages. But using filtering, we've actually filtered out 2,151 messages, saving about 10%, which is £34. So 10% over 600,000, you can imagine that's going to save you rather a considerable amount of money. So in this instance, it's only 34 quid, but it'll go up significantly when you're sending more numbers. At the bottom of the page, you can also see that each of the filters has filtered out numbers separately. So in fact, last known active has actually been more successful than known live number. I'm going to go back to the filter set now and add the elements for driving engagement. So we would like to drive engagement with this message by avoiding sending messages to people who are likely to respond badly to SMS. So in this instance, I'm going to add has an opt-out rate less than and has an expletive rate less than. Just to let you know, when you import new behavioral filters into your filter set template, it does actually set them at what we perceive to be the benchmark criteria for those filters. So in this instance, it's populated both of them at 50%, and I'm going to leave that as it comes. When you learn more about filtering and more about your data, you'll probably find that you can change those percentages to get different results, but for this instance, 50% is fine. I'm going to run the filter simulation again now. This time I anticipate that it'll probably take a little bit longer, and that's because we're using more filters, and the filters are processed in order that they're positioned in the template. So it's starting with, is the number live, then it's looking at when they were last active, then it's looking at whether they opt out, and finally it's looking at whether they send expletives. So it's just going to take a few minutes to run that now.
One point to point out is clearly when messages are being processed live, it's actually done within milliseconds. The way that our infrastructure is set out is that the simulation servers sit differently and are not of the same power, but that's why there's some slower elements of the processing instead of what you actually, the speed that it operates at in a live environment.
Okay, so we can see here on our results page that we've now got two sets of results. So the previous instance on the right is greyed out, and the current filter set is on the left. You can see that there's very little actual difference with our new filters that we've added. But really, in general, I'd suggest that you add those filters to any filter set that you create, because really, as Paul mentioned earlier, you don't want to be sending to people who are going to opt out, people that are going to get aggressive, and people that are potentially going to cause you complaints and brand damage and all sorts of problems. So in this instance, though it hasn't saved us much money, it's been worthwhile in the long run to ensure that we're not upsetting anybody.
I think it's clear that to say that, you know, if it's 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 people, obviously we're looking at just a subset of 10,000 here of the 600,000 that were sent out. The reality was in the actual major send it did actually have an impact with the opt-out and the expletives, but it's about the brand, protecting the brand side of things, so it's an important filter to place in.
Okay, finally I'm going to go back one more time, and this time I'm going to add an element for targeting. So as we mentioned earlier, the campaign is to target people using specific operating systems to drive them to download an app. So I'm going to select the operating systems on which our app is available. Just those three there, iOS, Android and Windows, and then I'm going to run the simulation again. So apologies if it takes another couple of minutes. Obviously in this instance we've only got apps on those 3 operating systems, but you could potentially add as many as you want, and also that filter is reversible. So as Paul mentioned earlier, if you wanted to not target people using a specific operating system, that's possible as well.
I think it's important to say that sometimes also we don't have complete coverage of all of the numbers that that are being processed. So the filters only affect the numbers where we have absolute knowledge of the fact that in this case it'll filter out those that we know do not have those prescribed operating systems. So I think in this scenario it's only taken out 47 people. Actually over the larger and the 600,000, it actually took out I think nearly 20-30,000 messages that were actually we knew weren't those devices or those device types.
Yeah, so it has made a small amount of difference, but basically what we can see is that it's removed people that we know definitely aren't using the relevant operating systems, which is important because you wouldn't want to be telling people on Blackberries to download iOS apps. So now that we've completed our filter set, we can choose to activate it. And once activated, that filter set can be used on any campaign or set as default to be used on every campaign. Obviously, if this is just a one-off campaign, so we use that once, but if you found it to be generic enough, you could use it on every campaign that you send out from this point forward. Now, I can't show you the actual results of the campaign for obvious reasons, so I'm just going to show you an example filter summary report page here and run you through some of the statistics that we got back. So company A saw the following results. They had total messages processed 600,000. They actually filtered out 26% of those messages, and that was a total of 156,000, and they sent the remaining 444,000. So that actually enabled them to save £2,496 on their campaign send.
So not that slide coming up, Liz?
There is indeed, Paul. I'm just going to pass the information back to you for you to cover the results in more detail.
Thank you very much, Liz. Great. Thank you, Liz. So in terms of the campaign brief that was set up initially, as Liz rightly said, that when looking at the portal in the headline figures, it actually showed that we processed 600,000, and actually the reality was we filtered out 26%, so 156,000 messages weren't sent. You can obviously work out that therefore 74% were sent, and in this scenario it actually saved our customer £2,496 on that singular campaign. However, the really great thing was their app downloads. Previously, I think they'd struggled to get over about 5,000 app downloads, and as you can see, that went up to 38,000 app downloads as an output. And I know how much money they spent on building the app, and trust me, that was a good return of investment for this campaign. The total click-throughs that we actually got. So remember we discussed about the fact that they'd switched on our URL tracking service. So the links that were sent to the app download pages were tracked by our service. So actually you can see that 32% of the people clicked, but only 8.5% went through to actually download the app, which means that the actual conversion rate from click to download was still incredibly high at 27% compared to sort of email marketing that you might get maybe 1%. So it just really shows you the power of not only messaging but also being able to target things more efficiently. The most important thing is kind of not what the good stuff was, which was the 8.5%. It's the fact that that actually, excuse my maths, that about 25% or so went to, clicked on it to go there but didn't download, and we could obviously provide the detail of specifically who those people were. And guess what? They're actually about to resend out a new campaign with an offer on it specifically to those 25% or so people. Actually, is it 25%? No, my maths is awful. So about 23% of people, 23.5% of people who didn't follow through and do the full click-through. So the power of filtering plus tracking has really created a huge ROI for this particular campaign, and we're very, very pleased to have been part of that. So that's kind of the campaign results. I think that hopefully from looking at, and listening to it, you can kind of get what the service and the value is. Target people who will respond. Don't target people who opt out all the time. If you want to get something specifically around driving some online content, send out first to the people who have a high click-through rate. You can always send out again to those that don't, but if you really want to get an ROI straight off the bat, target somebody, and also make sure that you don't disrupt people whilst they're on holiday, because that can be highly annoying and again could cause some issues. So it really is very good, and obviously you can get far more information by using the Intelligent Query service that will give you all of the information and how that's built. Any questions at all from the audience? We've got one here. Hang on. It would be great if you could advise on the costs for these services too. I know there's a standard dead numbers free of charge service, but getting a breakdown of costs for the extended filtering options would be great. Essentially, the way that the cost mechanism works is that for any message that is dropped, it's charged at half the cost of sending a message. So, for instance, if someone sending out a message was going to cost 3p, the charge for filtering it out is 1.5p. So essentially, the customer always saves money, whatever we do, because obviously the system, we do have to pay for the system somehow and do that. So that's how the system and the intelligent filtering costs work. I've got another one here. What happens to the messages that are filtered out? The messages that are filtered out are literally filtered out. We don't store them, because if we were to store the messages that were filtered out, we'd be in theory storing campaign information, which we don't do because we're a platform. However, again, you would then go onto the query to find out the numbers and the reasons why those messages were filtered out. How easy is it to activate? Incredibly easy. I think we missed out the how to activate piece on the demo, but if you go into the Intelligent Cloud Services, it's a little button and you say activate intelligent filtering. So not bad at all. Any other questions? All right, hang on, I've got one here. If I use APIs, can I still access the service? Absolutely. The key thing is about all our services that they are either accessible through APIs or through our campaigns services or our campaign cloud and our applications. So absolutely. Okay, no more questions. Well, I think that leads me to the end. Thank you very much for coming along to the demonstration. I hope you found it useful. I hope you can see how we're trying to drive value and do something, do something good in the mobile space, do some good stuff. I hope that you will switch on the service as soon as you can and start getting the benefits. Thank you very much, and thank you, Liz, for helping me.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.